Exuma is a South Korean supernatural horror film which involves mystery and history. After watching this video, you will get familiarized with the hidden facts of the movie. Let's see the characters of the movie. I don't know Korean, so please excuse me if I mispronounce the names of the characters. Well, first, Harem. Harem is a shaman. Shaman is the person who interacts with spirits. Next, Bongal is Harem's assistant. Sando. Sando is a fungsu. Fungsus are expert in picking out the best spot for a grave. Park Ji-young. He is the person in the movie who wants to exhume his grandfather. And Anima. Anima is a Japanese samurai demon. What happens in the film? Park Ji-young's newborn son was in an inexplicable medical condition. Park Ji-young was done with relying on Western medicine to fix his son's condition. When a shaman Harem is called to take a look, she and her assistant Bongal are quick to recognize the darkness that surrounds the Park's family. There was a generational curse that has been haunting the eldest grandchildren. An ancestor, Park Ji-young's grandfather's spirit, was so angry. To be exact, he has been calling his kin from beyond the grave. The solution is to perform an exhumation of the grave. Exhumation is nothing but an act of removing the dead body from the ground where it has been buried. Exhuming the grave to either change the location of the dead or fix whatever is bothering them in the afterlife is something that happens quite often in Korea. Sang-do is another character in the movie who is quite an expert in picking out the best spot for a grave or a new building. The promise of huge payday of course excites Sang-do. All of them reaches the spot where the grave is. What he can't figure out is why Ji-young's grandfather's grave is atop a mountain that is frequented by foxes. In their culture, foxes and graves don't quite mix. If you see scientifically, the ancient Korean people don't bury their dead kin in the areas where foxes roamed simply because they were worried that the foxes would dig up the grave. Why was Park's grandfather's spirit so angry? Harem performed rituals and of course did a safe exhumation. When the coffin was placed in a mortuary, a guy opened the coffin to check if he can get some treasure from inside. Park's grandfather's spirit goes to Park's house. The shaman figures out that he's up to no good. In the aftermath, Ji-young's parents died. Sang-do rushed to Park's house to help him, but Ji-young himself was possessed and was killed right before Sang-do's eyes. Fine, coming to the point, why is grandfather's spirit so angry for his family's blood? There is a pretty simple reason behind his grudge. The burial site never let his spirit to be at peace. For over 100 years, his painful calling has been ignored by his family. He has been tormented by hunger and thirst. Park's grandfather's spirit was so furious at his bloodline for being left unheard, while his spirit was in pain inside his coffin for a century. And when Harem summoned and tied his spirit through Bongal, he said that he was there to take his family back to the dark realm where he belongs. Luckily, before he can kill Ji-young's newborn, Sang-do gets Ji-young's auntie's permission to cremate his remains. His spirit was expelled from the mortal realm before he can punish his innocent great-grandson for the torment he took no part in. What was Park's family's secret? Why did they bury Park's grandfather in an odd location? A monk named Ji-soon chose that place for the grave, and to add to the peculiarity of it all, there were a very specific set of coordinates engraved on the tomb. Sang-do already figured out that Park's grandfather was a traitor who sold out his own country to the enemy when the Japanese colonizers were occupying the Korean peninsula between 1910 and 1945. The money and power he received as a reward for his betrayal of his own people still determine the Park's family status in the current timeline. With Park's grandfather, the family buried their shame on top of the mountain that stands near the 38th parallel, the border between North Korea and South Korea. But even though their secret is now out in the open, Ji-young's aunt claimed in the movie that she doesn't know why her father was allotted such an awful burial site despite his unwavering loyalty to the Japanese. What is the significance of the snake in the movie? The movie speaks of the importance of 5 elements: water, fire, earth, wood, and metal. When an oddly huge coffin was unearthed from underneath where Park's grandfather was buried, a grave digger made a big mistake in killing a snake after grandfather Park's coffin was exhumed. If you look closely, the head of the snake looked eerily human. And that's because it wasn't an ordinary snake. It was Nure Onna, a creature in Japanese folklore with the head of a woman and a body of a snake. If you analyze according to the understanding of the five elements, the snake was the only water element in the grave, ensuring the equilibrium that trapped the anima. As I said, anima is a Japanese samurai demon in the movie. Killing Nure Onna messed with the harmony of the elements and fed the anima. Who is Jisun in the movie? To answer that, we have to see over the origin of anima. Sangdo and Harem were right to take the anima's coffin to the nearby Bahusa temple. And what they couldn't possibly fathom was that no amount of horse blood or glutinous rice could trap what was inside the coffin. After butchering the temple's monk and a barn worker, the anima takes over Bongal and makes him his puppet. What's intriguing about this murderous spirit who can turn into an orb of fire in his fondness for sweet fish and melon? It's another way for you to connect to anima back to its living form. Of course, a Japanese samurai who had a fondness for sweet fish. But the creation of this vicious anima out of a regular Japanese samurai could have only been achieved by someone immensely powerful. And that's where Jisun comes in. Harem's sister rightly recognizes Jisun as a Japanese onyogi. On-yogis are believed to be formidable spiritualists. It's also mentioned that Harem's master once faced this terrifying on-yogi and somehow lived to tell the tale. The film makes it a point to refer to Jisun as the fox, and he is the same pale person in the picture with Park's grandfather. Jisun was an evil fox spirit who transformed the Japanese samurai into a bloodthirsty anima. He was the one who instructed the Parks family to bury Park's grandfather atop the anima's coffin so as to keep the anima's location a secret. What is the story of the iron stakes? The Bahusa temple had a big part to play when Sangdo was looking beyond the immediate threat and trying to get an idea about the bigger conspiracy at play. He came to know about the grave robbers who frequently visited the area a century ago and left behind their equipment. When Sangdo later came to learn from the book that belongs to the grave robbers was that they were serving a national purpose. And this brings us to another Korean legend that has been around ever since the Japanese attempt to occupy Korea. In a country where feng shui heavily influences the national cultural fabric and the day-to-day lives of the people, the energy running through the grounds is of the utmost importance. For centuries, Korean geomancers have been trying to battle the feng shui's terrorism carried out by the Japanese during colonization. It is because the Japanese impaled the ground with iron stakes to block the feng shui's energy that's considered the heart of the Korean national spirit. It was supposed to weaken Korea, and even the government used to aid the hikes taken by the Korean people who were looking for these iron stakes. In Exuma, the grave robbers were actually a group of patriots and possibly shamans who called themselves the Iron Blood Alliance and were out on a quest to find those iron stakes. When Ji-young was possessed, he said the fox cut off the tiger's waist. It takes a while for Shang-do to see what was right in front of his eyes, but he eventually figured out that the tiger was supposed to represent the map of the Korean peninsula. If the fox is Ji-sun and an iron stake was put through the waist of the tiger, Park's grandfather and the anima's burial site has to be a spot pierced by one of those stakes. Park's grandfather's coffin was only placed in that spot 100 years ago, so it would dissuade people from looking underneath and finding the iron stake. The coordinates on the tomb were the exact location of the tiger's waist, where the iron stake was put to divide the nation in half. How did Sangdo kill the anima? Harem and Bongal were about to move with their lives when they chose to offer their assistance in taking care of the anima's coffin. And even though it was extremely painful for Harem to see Bongal in such a terrible state when his mind became one with the anima's, she and her sister refused to give up and pulled out all the stops to help him out. Harem was aware of the huge risk Sangdo was taking by going back to the burial site. Even if the iron stake was there, like he expected, they would have to distract the anima for long enough so that Sangdo could dig it up. Luckily, Harem had a ritual up her sleeve to direct the anima's attention to a tree for a short period of time. Before they could even begin the process, they had to secure every end and prepare for the worst possibilities. Harem did notice that the anima avoided the protective inscriptions tattooed on Bongal when he attacked him. And since Bongal is being puppeted by the anima, it only makes sense to cover his head to toe in the protective inscription. With Harem's sister guarding Bongal with a chicken, they were ready to sacrifice if the need arise. Harem, Sangdo and another person who was accountant of Mr. Park in the movie painted the same inscriptions all over themselves and headed to the burial site. Harem was initially successful in distracting the anima, but there was no iron stake to be found in the hollow grave. And you might have noticed that Harem speaks to the spirit of her grandmother like she's around her. We can guess that Harem's grandmother could have been a powerful shaman as well. Harem's sister were also pretty capable with the chants and the rituals themselves. When the anima gets restless and threatened Harem's life, what held him back is the combined effect of the protective inscription and the presence of her grandmother's spirit. But why does the inscription even work on someone as powerful as the anima? To understand that, you have to pay close attention to what he said to Harem. The anima was the Japanese samurai who fought in the Battle of Shigigahara. Jisun had him locked up in the Daidokyu temple, which is how the anima came to fear the Buddhist inscriptions that then protected the group. In Exuma's ending, Sangdo doesn't find an iron stake in the grave because he doesn't quite know what he was looking for. Jisun was careful in picking the iron stake for the most crucial part in all of Korea. So instead of a regular stake, he chose a Japanese samurai who killed 10,000 soldiers on the battlefield as a vessel for a special sword. The flaming iron sword was placed inside the samurai, creating the anima. Since the anima himself is supposed to act as the iron stake for this specific spot, the coffin was buried as though it was stabbed into the earth. In the ending sequence, Sangdo's knowledge of feng shui comes in handy in saving them from anima. If there is peace and prosperity to be found in creating an equilibrium between the five elements, the elements can be used to subdue one another too. The anima represents fire and metal. And if he was attacked with a piece of soaked wood, the wood would nullify the power of the metal and the water would overpower the fire. As Sangdo soaked the engraved pickaxe that belongs to the people of the Iron Blood Alliance with his blood, he basically created a weapon with the two elements, that is wood and water, that cancelled out the elements that empower the anima, that is fire and metal. In the same ground where his ancestors fought and shed their blood, Sangdo blood kills the anima, the last remnant of the colonizers. So in a way, Sangdo had been fighting a patriotic battle even without being aware of it until the very end. And as a reward, he found a sense of belonging with Harem, Bongul and Park's assistant. Well, the explanation is done, and now do watch the movie again and see the hidden details. If you like the video, please do like and subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thank you.